It's cold in here today, and if I turn on the heater, there's a fan that comes with it, which I don't want you to listen to. So I'm going to function with a nice warm coat. Today, I'm talking about the small camera revolution. And all the cameras before small cameras came along were fairly large beasts like this. This is my studio camera. They're heavy, and they take time to set up. As you learned during the Straight Photographers, I believe I made the comment that Edward Weston could set up and pull his camera in 2 minutes and 20 seconds, which is astounding. These things are a bit of a production to set up. I want to take a few minutes and talk about this. You see on your list, large format 4x5. This is a 4x5 view camera. They're also 8x10, 1620, and 20x24, which are these huge beasts. You've seen pictures of them in your textbook, but I don't deal with that. I don't think that big. 4x5 works out really well for me. This camera was my life's blood and my income, my pride and joy for the first 20 years out of commercial art school. It was my total source of income. And I lived and died by this thing. I love this camera. So the camera has what we call camera movements. Other cameras don't actually have this. This is tilt. So this is the film. This is where the lens is, and this is where the film is. This tilts. This does a thing called a shift. It has what's called rise and fall, and it has a thing called swing. Those movements can be found on the back too, all of those movements. Now on the back, they control perspective, how the pictures may be twisted, angled, but on the front, they manage focus. And in terms of studio photography, these are little miracles. But in terms of Ansel Adams photographing at a distance, if he can take this front element and tilt it, he can actually carry focus more easily off into the distance. This would help him expand his depth of field. The lens of this camera. And this talk is all about convenience versus quality. It can safely be said that when it comes to film, bigger really is better. When your film's large, you're going to have more information recorded on film. Now, as you can see through the lens right now. I would have to take a picture. I would stop, and I would look to the back, and I would focus it, and take my magnifying loupe and look at the back. And I would also have to, where did I put that? Take a dark cloth and put it over my head, because in the sun, this is all glared. I can't see a thing. So you put a dark cloth over your head as well, to even just look through the camera and make your decisions. And once you have, by the way, this camera has no meter on the inside. Unlike your cameras, this camera has no light meter. So you have to bring with you a light meter. This is a Sekonic light meter. They're okay. This is a Luna Pro. It's a great meter. Or your Ansel Adams, you want to have a spot meter to compute your exposure, but you must meter separately. And once you've configured out your metering, you go and you focused it, you go to the lens, you have to lock everything down. You want everything locked so nothing moves on you. And now I'm going to set the aperture. As you can see, the hole gets smaller, and I'm going to lock it by closing it. And I'm going to cock the shutter. Right now it is set to T. T is a setting where if I click it and open it, it stays open. I can take my hands off it. I can leave it open as long as I want, a month. This is how you get the stars crossing the sky, and one of those exposures runs all night. And when I pop it a second time, it closes. If I set it to B, bulb, which most of your cameras have, it opens as long as I hold it open, and then it releases. And the next setting is 1 second. Piece of advice, set the time before you cock the shutter. It's healthier for the parts of your lens. Now, you must load film first. Let's talk about loading film. I'm going to point this camera down if I can at the table. And here's your objective. This is a film holder. It holds 2 sheets, one on each side. So you must, in the dark, open your box of film. This is all ruined film, so I don't actually care. And what you'll find in the box is that the box is a double chambered box. So you have to open it a second time. Hold on, I'm getting a text here. Is it important? No. And in the dark, you'll find in here a little piece of cardboard with film on the inside. And what you have to do is take the film and with your right hand, find what we call the notch code. These little guides here. This notch code, on the back of the box, there will be a notch code, which tells you what to expect and what film it is. So I have to, in the complete darkness, open this up. And slide this underneath these guides into here, close it. And I want the white side out, which means that there is fresh film, unexposed film in there. There's also bumps here. So in the dark, you can feel it and know that this is the unexposed side. And now I'll open the other side and do the same thing. I have little locking hooks here that help me. I have to pop this open and feed this in, and this must be done in total darkness. When you load film, you're going to learn what it means to be a blind person and how to manage it. And I'm going to turn this back up again. And then you want to take a picture. So you've caught the shutter and you, without moving this, I'm moving this back and forth for, for demonstration purposes, but you would lock it in a position. So you don't want anything to move. And I'm going to lock the back. So I don't want this thing moving all around on me. And then you pop the back open, slide a holder in. Pull the slide out. Out of the shutter, you have now just taken one picture. Now, as you may already have surmised, that film, I loaded it right in front of you, so that film is useless. I haven't done anything but re-expose already exposed film. And then you flip this over and you take a second picture. Literally only takes 2 pictures. That's it. Now the film is big, so the quality is good, but it's up to you to make a number of decisions here. Focus it very carefully, commit yourself to a sheet of film, double check your exposure. There's a number of decisions to make. One of the decisions I haven't even mentioned is this. When you're focusing very close to something, you'll notice with your own cameras that the lens pulls out. So if I focus really close and this pulled way out, I would have to measure this point to point. This is an 8-inch lens. So the apertures are all good at 8 inches. But if this comes to 11 inches, I need to add 1 full stop of light. Now I want you to all relax for a second because I'm not going to ask you all these details, but I want you to be aware that the paper you're going to write is a compare and contrast of small and large format cameras for convenience and quality. Inconvenient, good quality. Very high quality, but not convenient. This is not a sports camera. This is not an action camera. They were used for portraiture, where you had to have a brace to make people stand still and hold exactly still. One of the things they pointed out, I pointed out early in the semester, I believe, was that the first cameras were fairly big, but took more light. And when they made the cameras smaller, And the daguerreotypes got smaller. They were faster because when you pull this out, the light is diminishes as a function of distance. But when the parts are closer together, the amount of light making it to the back wall where the film plane is greater. And therefore the exposure is a little quicker. The last thing I will make one more comment about large format is, so this film here, which I'm now going to ruin yet again, it's already completely ruined, must be developed, of course. So you have to put it into a film hanger. In the dark, you must do this. If I haven't already said this, I'll say it now. Kodak famously hires more blind people than any other company in the world. The entire factory has to be completely in the dark. You can never turn the lights on except in a major emergency. Everything's in Braille. And then you have several of these tanks with developer stop and fix, and you will have to develop and agitate your film. It goes in, bam, 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 knock off the bubbles, and then you agitate this. This process is completely end-to-end, completely in the dark. The first time your film can see light is halfway through the fixer stage. But all other steps must be in complete darkness. So that's the quality, but the inconvenience of the 4x5. Next on your list is medium format. Medium format cameras are, well, here's an example of medium format film. It's rolled film. It's bigger than 35 millimeter. And it is, this is my medium format camera. This is a Mamiya RB67 rollback 6x67. So it's 6 centimeters by 7 centimeters. You can take the backs off and can change the backs of film. I'm not going to do it now, but here's an extra film back. I can put a separate piece of roll of film in here, change my mind. It also comes with a Polaroid back, which I can pop on and sample my exposure with a Polaroid when Polaroid was available. Polaroid comes in Braille, sadly. Now, like the 4x5, this does not have a meter on the inside. But you flip up the back, and then up here, the magnifying glass that pops up, and you look through it, you focus it, and you're set to go. And all the shutter speed and aperture are all conveniently right here. Interchangeable lenses. This is actually a wonderful, wonderful camera. I love this camera too. I love all my cameras. It's like loving your children. So this is a spectacular camera, which I really appreciate, and I've loved it since the day I bought it. I bought it used. Now, processing 2 1/4 film. Hold on here. These are plastic reels from a Patterson tank. And these are, that's the 35 millimeter size, that's the 2 1/4 size. And the key is this. You can actually collapse this down to 35 millimeter or expand it up. Don't do this to me. Into a 2 1/4 size. So now this would take 2 1/4 film inside of here and develop it in a tank. Once it's inside of here, you put it on a little post here. This post has a flange on the end, a wider end. You pop it here. And your tank, the top of the tank has this little, it goes, this little part that feeds right into that post. And you have a light trap. So now I can pour chemistry in and out of here. I can put this red cap on. And when I agitate it, it does not spill. This can be done in full light. The only drawback is if you're using infrared light, infrared can penetrate some plastic cans. That's the only drawback. Aside from that, this is a great system. Some of the major brands of medium format are Rolleiflex. Rolleiflex is the camera used by Vivian Maier, portraitist. Hasselblads went to the moon. And that picture in Stray Photographer at the end of the Ansel Adams series, he's holding a Hasselblad. Mamiya, that's the camera I just held up here. The Yashica is a twin lens I gave my daughter. There's a number of brands. Oh, by the way, there's like 50 Hasselblads left on the moon. They're free if you can get there. They have interchangeable backs, and they accept a Polaroid back as well. Now, it is a bigger piece of film, and it has a lot of quality comes with that. The next thing I want to talk about is small format, which is Nikon, Canon, Konica, Pentax, Minolta, the Kodak Instamatic. The sizes were 35 millimeter and 110. 35 millimeter film has sprockets on it for one thing, and that's how the camera pulls it through. Can you see those sprockets? So the camera advances it this way by pulling on the sprockets. In terms of the 2 1/4, the film comes with numbers on the back. And not this camera, but a lot of those older 2 1/4 cameras had a little red window, and the numbers would parade in front of it. And that's how when you knew you'd advance the film enough. But in 35 millimeter cameras, there's a gearing system such that as you pull it through, it winds to the next piece of fresh film, and you can take a picture. So this is 36 frames of film. Story goes to the manufacturer of it. The first manufacturer, it was the reach of his arm when he spread his arms out completely to be out of the range of your camera right now. And those are developed conveniently in a little holder like this. 35 millimeter cameras are very small and very quick. And now they're cheap because everybody went digital. But by virtue of the smaller format, there is a reduction of image quality. Now, I also have on the list Instamatic. Instamatic was a really simple, cheap camera that Kodak made in the 60s with a cartridge that just dropped in the back. You close the back and you wind it, and it's pulling the film through. And it was what we call 110 film, which is actually pretty small, much smaller than 35 millimeter, much smaller than 4x5. And when you enlarged it, it was kind of ratty looking. It wasn't really high quality image by any measure, but it was certainly convenient. Now, the paper you're going to write is compare and contrast the quality or the convenience. You know, if you're shooting 4x5, is the quality good? If you're shooting 35, is the quality good? If you're shooting 4x5, is it easy to deal with? The answer is a definitive no. If you're shooting 35 millimeter, is it easy to deal with? And yes, it's very quick. You can load 36 pictures in a row. Remember, this is just 2 pictures. And you had to keep a bunch of these with you to get more than 2 pictures. And change them every time. 35 millimeter, you can squeeze 36 pictures out of there. Also look at your list. You'll see under medium format, formats of 620 and 120. This film here is 120. 220 is literally twice as long. That's all it is, twice as much film. But then you see 645, which is 6 centimeters by 4.5 centimeters. And all the 2 1/4 film is the same length, whether it's 120 or 620 or 220. But how many frames you can squeeze out of it is the larger question. If you have a smaller frame, you can get 16 out of this. If you have the 6x6, which is a square like the Hasselblad, you can get 12 out of this. If you have a 6x7 like I do, you get 10 frames out of this. A 6x9 gets 8 frames out of this, and a 6x17, which is a camera that takes a big length of picture. It's a big panoramic kind of a camera, hard to find. I know somebody who has one. Pictures are gorgeous. You only get 3 pictures out of it, so you want to think it through. So let's talk, I'm going to go to convenience versus quality for a minute. Small format cameras are quick and convenient with a loss of image quality. Large format cameras are high quality, definitely high quality, but they're heavy, time consuming, and difficult to set up. This is a production to set this thing up. Medium format is a reasonable trade-off between small format quality and large format complexity and staging. Your paper is going to be to talk about those parts of convenience versus quality versus how many steps it takes to set this thing up. Now, one more thing I want to mention about small format. I've got it here. Hold on for a minute, I have to grab something. Thank you for your patience. The making cameras smaller brought about an incredibly visual world. The two premier magazines, actually there's three. This is Look magazine. And Look magazine was largely a picture magazine. Large pictures. Pictures of the Kennedy White House with his little son, John John. John Kennedy Jr. was then known as John John. He was really small. And Life magazine. So conversely, here's the burial of John Kennedy and that famous picture of Jacqueline Kennedy as his casket goes by. And his casket in the rotunda. So these magazines were picture driven. Now, the one I don't have here right now is National Geographic, which is also very picture content driven. And small cameras brought this about. Most of National Geographic is shot with a 35 millimeter on Kodachrome, or was Kodachrome 64. And it came to a point where reporters largely leaned all over 35 millimeter camera. Frank Capra on the beaches of Normandy was working 35 millimeter. Lee Miller and Margaret Burke White, following the forces as Germany collapsed, were working in 2¼ and medium format. Sure, Joe Rosenthal at the top of Iwo Jima had a Speed Graphics, which is a 4x5. But there was an dramatically increasing use of 35 millimeter for all sorts of applications: news, documentation, police reporting, photography. So there's the groundwork for your next paper. And email me or visit me on Monday during office hours if you have any questions at all. Thank you very much.